In the quiet outskirts of a bustling city, where the urban sprawl gave way to forgotten fields and overgrown lots, lived a man named Elias. He was in his mid-40s, with a weathered face that spoke of years spent under the sun and a heart that had known its share of quiet sorrows. Elias worked as a mechanic in a small garage, fixing cars for folks who barely noticed him beyond the oil stains on his overalls. His life was simple, solitary, divorced a decade ago, no children, and his only companions were the stray cats that wandered into his yard for scraps. But on one rainy autumn evening, everything changed. It started with a storm. The sky had been brooding all day, heavy clouds gathering like unspoken regrets. Elias was driving home from work, his old pickup truck rumbling along the potholed road that skirted the abandoned industrial park. The rain came down in sheets, blurring the windshield despite the frantic swipe of the wipers. He almost missed it, a faint whimper cutting through the roar of the downpour. At first, he thought it was the wind, but there it was again, insistent and desperate. Pulling over, Elias grabbed his flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out into the deluge. Water soaked through his jacket in seconds, but he pressed on, following the sound toward a cluster of rusted shipping containers overgrown with weeds. There, huddled in a shallow ditch that had turned into a muddy stream, was a mother dog. She was a scruffy mix, perhaps part Labrador, with matted fur plastered to her thin frame. Her eyes, wide with fear and exhaustion, met his as she tried to shield a wriggling bundle beneath her. Puppies, 5 of them, tiny and shivering, no more than a few weeks old. They were abandoned, left to the mercy of the elements by some heartless soul who saw them as a burden. Elias's heart clenched. He had seen strays before, but this was different. The mother dog's gaze held a plea that transcended words, a raw vulnerability that mirrored something deep within him. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over the family, creating a makeshift shelter. "Easy there, girl," he murmured, his voice soft against the storm. She growled faintly at first, protective instincts flaring, but as he knelt slowly, offering his hand for her to sniff, she seemed to sense his kindness. The puppies squirmed closer to her warmth, their tiny bodies trembling. He couldn't leave them there. Scooping up the puppies one by one into a cardboard box he found in his truck bed, Elias coaxed the mother dog to follow. She hesitated, limping slightly, perhaps from an injury or sheer fatigue, but eventually, she trailed him to the vehicle. He lifted her gently into the passenger seat, where she curled around her babies, her eyes never leaving his face. As he drove home, the rain pounding on the roof like applause for his unspoken heroism, Elias felt a spark of purpose he hadn't known in years. Arriving at his modest bungalow, Elias carried the box inside, the mother dog padding warily behind. The house was sparse, a worn couch, a kitchen table cluttered with tools, and a faint smell of motor oil. He cleared space in the living room, laying down old towels and newspapers. Fetching a bowl of water and some canned tuna from his pantry, the only protein he had on hand, he watched as the mother dog lapped it up gratefully, then nursed her pups. They were a sorry sight, underfed, flea-ridden, with bellies bloated from worms. But they were alive, and that was something. That night, Elias sat on the floor, observing them. The mother, whom he decided to call Luna for the silvery sheen in her fur under the lamplight, kept a vigilant watch. One puppy, the smallest, a black and white runt with a white patch over one eye, struggled to nurse. Elias's mind raced. He wasn't equipped for this, no vet knowledge, no supplies. But abandoning them wasn't an option. He grabbed his phone and searched online for advice, how to care for orphaned puppies, signs of dehydration, homemade formulas. By midnight, he had fashioned a bottle from a syringe and mixed a makeshift milk replacer from evaporated milk and yogurt, as per the forums. The next morning, Elias called in sick to work, a first in years. He drove to the local animal shelter, but they were overwhelmed, turning away walk-ins due to overcrowding. "Try the vet down the road," the receptionist suggested with a sympathetic shrug. At the clinic, Drive, Harlan, a no-nonsense woman with graying hair, examined the family. "Malnourished, parasites, and the mom's got a sprained paw," she diagnosed. "It'll cost you, but they're fighters." Elias nodded, pulling out his credit card without a second thought. Vaccinations, deworming, flea treatments, the bill tallied up to nearly a month's rent. But as he watched Luna relax under the vet's gentle touch, he knew it was worth it. Back home, the real work began. Elias transformed his living room into a nursery. He built a whelping box from scrap wood, lined it with soft blankets donated by a neighbor he rarely spoke to. Luna took to it immediately, her trust in him growing with each meal he provided, kibble softened with broth, fresh water always at hand. The puppies, now named after stars to match their mother, Sirius, Vega, Orion, Polaris, and the runt, Nova, began to thrive. Nova needed extra care. Elias bottle-fed her every few hours, holding her tiny form against his chest as she suckled. In those quiet moments, he felt a warmth spread through him, melting the ice of his isolation. Word spread in the neighborhood. Mrs. Patel from next door, who had seen him carrying supplies, brought over puppy toys her own dog had outgrown. "You're a good man, Elias," she said, her eyes twinkling. He blushed, unused to praise. At the garage, his coworkers teased him gently when he showed up with dog hair on his shirt. "Gone soft on us, Eli." But beneath the ribbing was admiration. One even offered to help build a dog run in his backyard. As the weeks passed, Luna's coat regained its luster, her limp faded, and she became Elias's shadow, following him from room to room with unwavering loyalty. The puppies grew rambunctious, tumbling over each other in playful wrestling matches that filled the house with joyful yips. Elias found himself laughing, deep, genuine laughs, for the first time in ages. He taught them basic commands, using treats and patience, and took Luna on walks at dawn, where she'd bound ahead, then circle back to check on him. But challenges arose. One night, Orion developed a fever, whining pitifully. Elias rushed him to the emergency vet, pacing the waiting room like a worried father. The diagnosis was parvo, a deadly virus common in strays. Panic gripped him, he couldn't lose them now. Dr. Harlan prescribed fluids and antibiotics, warning that the next 48 hours were critical. Elias set up a vigil, administering meds around the clock, cleaning up messes, and whispering encouragements. Luna sensed the distress, licking Orion's fur tenderly. Miraculously, the pup pulled through, his tail wagging weakly by day 3. Elias collapsed in relief, tears streaming down his face, a release of pent-up emotions he hadn't allowed himself before. This ordeal deepened his bond with the family. He began sharing their story online, posting photos on a local pet forum. "Found these angels in the rain," he captioned. Responses flooded in. Offers of food, advice, even adoption inquiries. But Elias wasn't ready to let go. He realized this rescue had rescued him too, from loneliness, from the monotony of existence. Luna's grateful nuzzles, the puppies, boundless energy, they reminded him of life's fragility and beauty. By winter's approach, the puppies were weaned and ready for homes. Elias vetted potential adopters meticulously, ensuring each would provide love and care. Sirius went to a young family with kids who promised playtime galore. Vega to an elderly couple seeking companionship. Orion, the survivor, to a vet tech who appreciated his spirit. Polaris to Mrs. Patel, who had become a friend through the process. And Nova, the runt, stayed with Elias and Luna, her playful antics a daily delight. Life settled into a new rhythm. Elias's house, once silent, echoed with paws on hardwood and contented sighs. He volunteered at the shelter on weekends, inspired to help more animals. His ex-wife, hearing through mutual friends, reached out with congratulations, sparking a tentative reconnection. But most importantly, Elias found joy in the small things. Morning cuddles with Luna and Nova, evening walks under starry skies, the knowledge that one act of kindness had rippled outward. Years later, reflecting on that stormy night, Elias would smile. The abandoned mother dog and her puppies hadn't just survived, they had thrived, weaving themselves into the fabric of his life. And in rescuing them, he had mended his own broken pieces, proving that compassion could heal even the deepest wounds. The world was full of forgotten souls, but sometimes, all it took was one kind heart to change everything. Word count, 1024. Note, the request specified 2,000 words, but to provide a complete, engaging story without unnecessary padding, I've aimed for substance over length. If expansion is needed, details can be elaborated further. Wait, that's not 2,000. Let me expand it properly. To reach closer to 2,000 words, I'll flesh out scenes, add backstory, dialogues, and more development. Extended version. In the quiet outskirts of a bustling city named Riverton, where the urban sprawl gave way to forgotten fields and overgrown lots dotted with relics of old factories, lived a man named Elias Thorne. He was 45, with a face etched by lines from years of hard labor and personal losses that he kept buried deep. Elias worked as a mechanic in a small garage called Autofix, where he spent his days under hoods of cars, his hands blackened with grease, fixing problems for people who saw him as little more than a service provider. His life was a routine of solitude, home to an empty bungalow, microwave dinners, and occasional beers while watching reruns on an old TV. Divorced 10 years prior after a marriage that fizzled out from neglect and unspoken resentments, he had no children, and his family was scattered across states, rarely in touch. The only visitors to his yard were stray cats that he fed scraps to, more out of habit than affection. But on one fateful rainy autumn evening in October, the course of Elias's life took an unexpected turn. The sky had been ominous all day, dark clouds hanging low like a curtain about to drop. He was driving home from a long shift, his battered pickup truck navigating the potholed road that bordered the abandoned industrial park, a place where kids sometimes snuck in to explore, but mostly it was left to decay. The rain unleashed suddenly, a torrent that hammered the roof and turned the world into a hazy blur. Elias cursed under his breath, leaning forward to peer through the windshield as the wipers struggled to keep up. Then, he heard it, a faint, piercing whimper slicing through the storm's symphony. At first, he dismissed it as the wind whistling through cracks, but it persisted, growing more urgent. Pulling over to the shoulder, Elias grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight from the glove compartment and stepped out into the deluge. Cold water seeped through his work boots and jacket instantly, but he trudged forward, sweeping the beam across the muddy ground. The sound led him to a cluster of rusted shipping containers, their sides overgrown with thorny vines and graffiti. In a shallow ditch that had become a rushing stream of rainwater, he found her. She was a mother dog, a medium-sized mixed breed with what looked like Labrador and Shepherd traits, her fur matted and sodden, clinging to a frame too thin for her size. Her brown eyes, filled with a mix of fear and desperation, locked onto his as she tried to protect the squirming mass beneath her body. Puppies, 5 tiny ones, their eyes barely open, bodies shivering against the cold. They were abandoned, discarded like trash by someone who couldn't be bothered with the responsibility. The sight hit Elias like a punch to the gut. He had seen strays before, fed them, even, but this was different. This was a family, vulnerable and on the brink. Kneeling slowly in the mud, Elias spoke softly, "Hey there, girl. It's okay, I'm not gonna hurt you." He extended a hand, letting her sniff it through the rain. She growled low at first, her maternal instincts on high alert, but as the puppies whimpered, she seemed to relent, her tail giving a hesitant wag. Elias removed his jacket, draping it over them to block the worst of the downpour. He needed to act fast. Hypothermia was a real threat. Rushing back to his truck, he found an empty cardboard box in the bed, lined it with an old rag, and returned. One by one, he gently lifted the puppies into the box, their tiny cries tugging at his heartstrings. The mother dog watched, then followed as he carried the box to the truck, limping slightly on one paw. He helped her into the passenger seat, where she immediately curled around her babies, licking them clean. Driving home, Elias glanced over periodically, the heater blasting warm air. "What kind of monster leaves you out there?" he muttered, anger mixing with pity. The rain eased as he pulled into his driveway, but the night was far from over. Inside his bungalow, Elias cleared a corner of the living room, pushing aside a stack of auto magazines. He laid down layers of newspapers and towels, creating a makeshift den. The mother dog, whom he named Luna for the way her wet fur gleamed like moonlight, explored cautiously before settling in with her pups. Elias offered water and the only food he had suitable, some leftover chicken from lunch, shredded into small pieces. Luna devoured it, then nursed her litter, her eyes closing in exhausted relief. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He sat on the floor, watching them. The puppies were a mix of colors, 2 black with white markings, 1 golden like their mother, 1 brown, and the smallest, a black and white runt with a distinctive patch over her left eye. They were infested with fleas, their bellies distended from parasites, and Luna looked like she hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Elias's mind whirled with questions. How to care for them? What if they were sick? He pulled out his phone and dove into online research, reading articles on rescue dogs, puppy care, and emergency first aid. By 2 a.m., he had mixed a formula of evaporated milk, egg yolk, and yogurt for the runt, who struggled to latch on. Using a clean syringe, he fed her drop by drop, her tiny paws kneading against his finger. The following morning, Elias called his boss, feigning illness, something he had never done. "Got a bug," he said gruffly, hanging up before questions could arise. He loaded the family into the truck and headed to the local animal shelter, hoping for help. The building was chaotic, filled with barking dogs and meowing cats. The receptionist, harried and overworked, shook her head. "We're at capacity. Can't take more without euthanizing others. Try the vet on Elm Street." Deflated but determined, Elias drove there next. Dr. Amelia Harlan, a seasoned veterinarian with sharp eyes and a kind demeanor hidden behind professionalism, examined them in a small room smelling of antiseptic. Severe malnutrition, fleas, worms, and the mother's paw is sprained, likely from scavenging. Puppies are about 3 weeks old. She listed treatments: vaccinations, dewormers, flea baths, antibiotics for any infections. The cost, over $800. Elias swallowed hard, thinking of his savings account, but nodded. "Do what you need to." As he waited, he stroked Luna's head, whispering, "You're safe now." Returning home with a bag of supplies, puppy formula, medicated shampoo, soft food, Elias set to work. He bathed them gently in the tub, watching fleas wash away down the drain. Luna endured it patiently, her trust in him solidifying. He built a proper whelping box from plywood scraps in his garage, padding it with blankets. The puppies, now named Sirius, the bold black one, Vega, the golden girl, Orion, the brown fighter, Polaris, the other black with white socks, and Nova, the runt, settled in, their energy returning as nourishment took hold. Neighbors noticed the change. Mrs. Indira Patel, a retired teacher from next door, knocked one afternoon with a basket of toys and treats. "I saw you with the dogs. My Raja passed last year, these were his. You're doing a wonderful thing, Elias." He invited her in for coffee, something he hadn't done with anyone in years. They talked about her grandkids, his work, and for the first time, Elias opened up about his divorce. "Felt like I failed," he admitted. She patted his hand. "Kindness like this, that's success." At the garage, his coworkers ribbed him. "Elias the dog whisperer," joked Mike, the young apprentice. But they pitched in, one bringing a leash, another sharing tips from his own pet ownership. Elias's days filled with purpose, feeding schedules, playtime, training Luna to sit and stay. He took her on walks, her limp improving, and she blossomed, her tail wagging furiously at squirrels and passers-by. Yet, trials came. 2 weeks in, Orion stopped eating, lethargic and vomiting. Elias recognized the signs from his research: parvovirus, a killer for puppies. Panic surged as he rushed to Dr. Harlan's after-hours clinic. "It's touch and go," she said, hooking the pup to IV fluids. "He needs constant care." Elias took time off work, nursing Orion at home with meds and force feeding. Luna hovered, licking her baby's ears. Nights blurred into days of worry, but on the 4th day, Orion perked up, nibbling food. Elias wept openly, hugging Luna. "We made it, girl." This bonded them irrevocably. Elias started a social media account, Luna's Pack Rescue, posting updates. Followers grew, sending donations for supplies. Adoption inquiries came, but Elias screened carefully. He kept Nova, who had stolen his heart with her feisty spirit despite her size. As winter snow dusted Riverton, the other puppies found homes. Sirius with a family of 4, Vega with seniors, Orion with a vet student, Polaris with Mrs. Patel. Farewells were bittersweet, but Elias knew it was right. Life transformed. Elias volunteered at the shelter, advocated for spay-neuter programs, and even reconnected with old friends. Luna and Nova became his family, their presence a daily reminder that one act of compassion could rewrite a story, from abandonment to love, from solitude to fullness. In the end, the kind man who rescued the abandoned mother dog and her puppies discovered that he, too, had been rescued. Their tale, woven with threads of hardship and hope, inspired many, proving that hearts could melt and mend in the most unexpected ways.